self-sabotage is very much just a response to the beliefs that belong to what I call the dick, the deepest inner critic. And so if you haven't done an interrogation of the core beliefs that your inner critic likes to say about you, then you're going to have no chance at really overcoming self-sabotaging behavior. And because the beliefs create the thoughts belong to the inner critic, and then the inner critic is that thing that's going to tell you, that's going to mislead you. It's the voice of the ego, it's the voice of fear. And so even for me in the drinking, it's like, oh, you need to go out and you need to express your free spirit this way, or you need to get validation this way, or you need to, and um
Hi there. Welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast. I'm your host, Kathleen Galatly, and I'm super excited to have you join us. In these episodes, we're going to have some heart-to-heart conversations with experts, everyday wellness enthusiasts, and, well, anyone with a story to share about their journey towards a more balanced and harmonious life. Welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast, where well-being meets wisdom, and the journey is just as important as the destination. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast, episode 25, which just every time I get to say a high number, it just excites me more and more. Thinking back on all the episodes up till now, it's just been such a blessing and so inspiring and educational, and actually just a complete treat for me to be able to be sitting in this chair having these conversations. And today is nothing short of exciting. We have the alchemized spirits, the wonderful Ashleigh van der Werven, here with us today. And I was connecting with Ashleigh. We met over kind of Instagram, I guess, over the interwebs, and found one another. And it just felt like you would be the perfect woman to have on the podcast, to be having these conversations. A lot of what you speak to is work that I've personally moved through and experienced. One of the big topics I know you speak to is our deep inner critic, which I know that if not 100%, then 98% of women listening to this podcast will know exactly what you're talking about. So excited for you to dive into that, and I know a variety of other topics. Firstly, though, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making the time. It's not taken for granted. And I know that the information that you are going to share today is going to be so supportive to everyone listening. So thanks, Ashleigh, for being here. And I'm going to stop speaking and I'm going to give you the floor. So please, a little introduction into who you are, where you're from, and you can kind of just continue a little bit. It's a loaded question. You're welcome to have a loaded answer. I love to hear about people's upbringings, maybe any aha moments that you remember that are those little kind of shining guiding lights that you remember now in hindsight on your path that has kind of led you into the work that you do today. I know that you've got more of a economic corporate background, and now you're in the work that you do today. So very excited to hear all about it, but the floor is yours, and thanks so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here, and I also don't take it lightly that you've made this time to hear my story and that I get to share it. Such a gift. And thank you for saying my surname properly. That is the best pronunciation of my surname ever.
Not Vanderhoven.
No, Vanderhoven, like, oh gosh, when I'm in America, it's a nightmare. That's surname. And they don't put spaces between the van and the der and they don't know that. They put it all together. So it's like sometimes my second name, my middle name is Van when I'm in America. Van
That's so
der.
funny. Oh nee, van der Werven ons hou so. Jy's
Yeah,
van Suid-Afrika af, ja.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so my story. Okay, my childhood. So I'm a mindset coach, I'm a spiritual guide. I help women with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I help them to heal that so that they can have success in their careers or enjoy the success that they're having. A lot of women are, they've had a lot of success already, but they're struggling to actually enjoy it, have peace with it, or have peace at work. And it's getting in the way of them either enjoying their work or doing even better. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. To start at the beginning, I've also been an actress for 12 years. So that's had a huge effect on my life. And when I left school, I acted. And I also the finance thing that I have a degree in economics and finance from UCT, from the University of Cape Town, but I didn't do anything with it. I just kind of like got that done so that, in fact, even at the time, if I wasn't going to go back into acting, because I acted, then did the degree, then went back to acting. Even if I didn't do that, it was more just to have something to start a business. I come from a very entrepreneurial family. My dad and my brother studied a BCom LLB and then went into business. So it was kind of like the thing is like get a degree, but then go into business, which is where I am now. But my childhood, so I was a crazy child. I had so much energy. I was very unhinged, like just literally a ball of energy. My mom said I ran before I could walk, and I was like a bouncy ball that you would just throw into a room. And I actually went to go see a movie the other day in the cinema, and it reminded me of how no one in my family would take me to see a movie when I was younger because I just couldn't sit through a whole movie. Like I was that. My dad's nickname was Roy Mira, so red
Yeah.
ants, like red ants in your
Your
pants.
pants.
Yeah. Which obviously didn't fit in very well with the schooling system. So I had quite I'm very lucky in that my family have always loved me and I've always had a great relationship with my parents. And I'm one of four kids. So I'm the youngest of four. Um, Big family that I love, very close to everyone. But this energy was a lot for the world to contain. And I was just always too much of me. And I could never seem to um control myself, like or manage my energy or manage this thing that I had. So I was put on Ritalin when I was 10 years old. They actually took me off Ritalin 2 weeks later because it made me even more batshit crazy. um and that same year I was sent to boarding school. So in grade 5 I was sent to boarding school in the Eastern Cape, which was about an hour flight and another 2-hour bus drive to Grahamstown in the middle of nowhere. And that had a profound effect on my life because even though I initially wanted to go, it was like, it's a really amazing school. I went to go visit it. It looked like freaking mini Hogwarts. I was like, cool, I'm game for this. But when I got there, um, it was quite traumatic for me because I I just didn't, the separation from my family was a lot. I didn't expect that. And then being this child that didn't know how to toe the line and had all this energy and all these impulses that she struggled to control, that I struggled to control, meant I got in trouble a lot. So it felt like me against the world, and I learned at a very young age to become very independent. And I learned a kind of story in my mind, which was no one's coming to save me. So I've got to do it all on my own. And I don't need anyone. So I was quite hurt. And at the same time, my parents were going through a divorce. My mom was going through her own thing. My dad was having a midlife crisis. And they're amazing parents. But at the time, I felt like I didn't have the support that I needed. And that turned me, into a very independent, I would call hyper independent person that I'm still working through a lot of that conditioning today of like, I don't need anyone. I don't want to rely on anyone. And so that was formed then. Um, then but at that school, so I was very naughty for a couple of years. And then towards the end of high school, I had a pivotal moment in grade 9 where we watched this documentary about South African kids living in townships. So they followed these 3 students who were very academically strong, like top in their grades, and they followed their journey of matriculating. And against this documentary shocked me because against all odds, these 3 managed to get their matric, like not proper teachers or teachers that were coming in and out, not proper school books, learning by candlelight at night because they didn't have electricity. And I was so shocked that like this was other people's experience. And then at the end of the documentary, none of them went to university because they A, couldn't afford it, and B, needed to now become the breadwinners for the family. And I was shocked. And I had a huge awakening that the school that I was at was actually incredible. And I was like, holy shit, I can be anything that I want at this school. Like there's a drama department, there's a dance department, there's a music school, there's a hockey field, there's a water polo. Like it was just can be whatever I want. And I became extremely grateful for my education. And then I actually finished that school top 7 distinction. So yeah, top 7 in the grade, and was one of only 7 girls out of, I don't know, 40, 45 to get a distinction and won various subject prizes. So I managed to get it together and toe the line. And there's also some conditioning around that because I learned to like contain my too muchness. I learned to contain my life, and suddenly it felt really good to be the good girl and not the bad girl. And I'm still undoing a lot of actually now that, even though it was amazing, I learned a lot of coping skills in that, which was like, how to toe the line and get approval and validation. Because like, trust me, that feels so much better than getting detention all the time and all the teachers hating you and stuff like that. So, um, so that was my childhood. And then to cut a really long story short about my adult life, I went straight into acting. I lived in LA and I studied at the Stella Adler Acting Academy. Then I came back to South Africa for a couple of years, because I wanted to get my degree, did my finance and economics degree, and then went back into the world of acting. And it was in acting that I learned everything that I know today. It was through that career, because it's probably one of the hardest careers that you could ever choose for yourself. I think stand-up comedy is probably the only thing that's worse. Maybe music, maybe sport, but I feel like sport, pretty quickly if you're not like the top, and then you make the top couple and then you make another plan. Whereas acting, you're just like always holding out for like a miracle, and it's very much in other people's hands. And I spent a lot of my 20s with this big dream, but self-sabotaging a lot. A lot. I had a lot of subconscious beliefs around a like being too much, but then simultaneously not being enough. Um, you know, having this untapped potential. So, when I was that ADHD child, it's like everyone used to say, oh, you have so much potential. You have so much potential, Ashleigh. Like, why can't you just get your shit together? So a lot of that conditioning was still in me. Struggled with, I partied in my 20s. And so drinking was a big part of that story. And I stopped drinking when I was 27. And I'll get to that. So yeah, I spent my 20s were messy, but there was this through line. When I was about 20, my mom sent me to a transformational facilitator, this woman, her name's Lynn Christopher. And I did a 3-month kind of program with her one-on-one. She's kind of like a coach, but not. And I had my first spiritual awakening with her. Her work is based in A Course in Miracles and a myriad of other things. And I learned about consciousness. I learned about forgiveness. I learned what it meant to be in alignment and in the field and in flow. And I'll never forget that 9 months, because it was the happiest, most awakened I ever was. Like, I was just, I had so much love for everyone. No one, you could walk into my face and be like, fuck you. And I would be like, are you okay? Can I help you?
You're projecting.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just like had this such a deep understanding that like none of this is about me, and so much like love for everyone. And that that awakening kind of started my spiritual journey, which was quite early at the age of 20. And so I think what held me together in my 20s, even though there was a lot of this mess and self-sabotage and, um, trying to make acting work. And also, yeah, it's also just a very hard career in itself. The through line of always working with different spiritual coaches and therapists and teachers held me together. And then that takes me to my dark night of the soul, which happened that first year of COVID. I was turning 30 in the second year after the first year, and I hadn't worked for a year. The film industry shut down and I'd burned through all my savings and I was pretty much broke. And it was this like reckoning of like, oh my God, I'm turning 30. I do not have my Oscar. Like everything that I wanted for my life is not here. I'm broke. Um, I need a corporate job. And someone found me, like a friend of a friend offered me a job. Actually, I went for the interview and I remember them asking to see my CV and I was like mortified because I was like, oh, I don't have a CV. I've got actress and waitress and like hostess or whatever. And that was just like not, and I think they saw me because of my finance and economics degree. And then around this time, I found a mindset and manifestation program for actors. And I did this program instead of getting the job. I actually asked my mom because I was like, Mom, there's this job and whatever. And my mom's the first person to tell me to like get real, like get your shit together. And when I called her and told her about this job, she's like, oh no, Ashleigh, you can't do that job. You will die. And I was like, what? Why? She's like, you will die in that office. Just, I don't know. We're thinking of doing a yoga teacher training. Just go do something else. It's going to work out. And I was like, okay. And then I found this mindset and manifestation program and I did it. And within 6 weeks, I manifested the most amount of work I'd ever had as an actress. I shot a TV series for SABC1. I shot a movie for Showmax, which is, South Africa's Netflix, everyone knows. I shot 2 commercials. I had a payment come through from like a year and a half ago on a commercial. And I yeah, it was insane. And I really understood the power of getting out of your own way, rewiring self-doubt, rewiring imposter syndrome, and the power of manifestation. And 3 modules into that course, she asked us a question, which was, if you had $1 million and you couldn't fail, what would you be doing in a year's time? Most powerful question you could ever ask yourself. But she got us into a meditative state before so that we weren't like too much in our heads. And she's like, just write on a piece of paper. And I just wrote on this piece of paper. And when I got to the end, I put down my pen and then I gasped. But I was like, oh, shit. I was like, I didn't write acting anywhere on this page. And the page was all about traveling the world, helping women, working with NGOs, and just like this whole other life that I realized I wanted. And I didn't even finish the program. After that, I'd been wanting to be a coach for about a year and a half before that anyway. I'd been thinking about it and I was like, that's it. I got certified as a coach. I started an NGO in Johannesburg by pure miracle and luck. And that takes us to where we are today,
Mm,
2 years into business. Yeah,
mm.
that was quite a long one, but
No,
yeah.
no, thank you. I think it's so relevant, even though, I think a lot of people always feel like it's like what's ahead of us, like it's all about releasing, letting go, letting go, letting go. And that, there's a big part of that is like, yes, there's the letting go, but there's also the acknowledgement and the acceptance of what was, and
Mm.
and where we've come from, and potentially the bars that we'd set for ourselves 3 years ago. Like, I resonate so much with your story. I feel like I don't know how we were not connected during 2020, because I was like in almost exactly the same place as you. I had
Wow.
resigned from my job. I'd moved in with my boyfriend on a farm, and I had no money, no job. There was no yoga community for me to join because it was lockdown, and I had nothing, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And so if I think of that past Kathleen and like what she might have envisioned 3 years ago, and I think of where I am now, I think it's so important to come to this point to be like, but my story does matter. And
Mm,
where I've come from does matter. And I don't necessarily have to be attached to it, but like just acknowledging that. So thank you so much for sharing. I love hearing where people come from,
yeah.
and their stories. And there's a few things that I want to like pick out from that. And what I'd love for us to start with is you quitting drinking at
Mm,
27, right? You said 27, I think.
yeah. Yeah.
I would love for you to share a little more about how that came to, because me too, I would definitely say that when I left my 20s, I was like, thank God those are done. Like, thanks, guys. It's been real. You got me into so much shit. But thank you for all the lessons that I learned along the way. No, thank you for all the hangovers that I had and all the parties and all the things that, like, ultimately, like, a lot of the things like just blur into one.
Mm,
I'm sure a lot of people who party or have partied, like, when you start really getting into your practices and awakening, you start to realize that it all becomes almost like a bit of a mush and a blur. And when you are drinking or you are smoking weed or whatever it is, and you're changing your frequencies, and everyone in the room comes into the same frequency, you come into the same conversation. Like, it's like when you go to like a braai with the same people and everyone's drinking beers and wine, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there has to be like an acknowledgement of everyone's trying to bring themselves into the same frequency so that the conversations can be had, and so that they're smoother and easier, and you can laugh at the fuck comments or keep quiet about the irritating comments or whatever the case might be. So I
yeah.
would love to hear a little more about your journey in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And just to speak to what you're talking about, it's like one of the greatest gifts I say of being sober and not drinking is like I view my life very honestly. So I can see when you blur, like you're talking about now, when you get everyone on the same frequency and blur that and then not say how you truly feel or whatever, like you don't actually know what's accurately going on. And I always say to people, they're like, don't you get bored? And I'm like, if I'm bored, I'm with the wrong people and I go home, because there are nights that I go out with the right group of people and I'll be out until 5 a.m. and I drink Coke Zero and or Red Bull, which isn't ideal, but whatever. And I party until 5 a.m. because the vibe is great. And then when the vibe is not great, I freaking go home at 10, and I'm not supposed to spend time with those people. And like, I don't want to waste my life spending time with, not that there's anything wrong with them, but like the vibe is just not there. So, what's honest about life is like, Ash, you should go home tonight. It's not going to happen tonight. But obviously, when you drink, you almost always have access to that because you're actually just numbing and like altering, kind of messing with the juju of life, of what the universe is trying to give you. Um, but yeah, so I was 27. I was living in LA, and I I mean, I wasn't any worse than your typical South African 27-year-old binge drinker, like I wasn't drinking every day. I was mainly just drinking on the weekends. I'd have like, wine in the night during the week, like a glass of wine here and there or two glasses. Um, but nothing out of the ordinary. No one at the time said you have a drinking problem, you need to stop drinking. There was none of that. And I was just drinking on the weekends, but I was noticing, and also LA has quite a big brunch culture. So you'll drink on a Friday and then you'll go to brunch on Saturday and then drink at the brunch and then brunch on Sunday as well. Like it was a lot of drinking on the weekends. And I just found, and then I'd be all like green juice and boxing during the week. And I just found that my hangovers, I just wasn't feeling myself. I was starting to feel very insecure, which was very foreign to me. And, I would only feel like my true self maybe on Wednesday again. And then I'd have Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday I'd just go and do it all over again. And there was this loop happening. And again, I'd like always had this spiritual connection. So I always felt like, wow, how deep could I like what into how deep could my spiritual gifts and connection be if I didn't drink? Like I always had that curiosity for years. I was like, flip, I wish I didn't drink because I just want to know how like powerful, like what I could see and what I could hear and what I could channel if I just, you know, um, and then also knowing that like I came here to live an extraordinary life. I had this big dream of being an actress, and I was like, flip, this drinking thing is just really not getting me forward. Like I'm just on this hamster wheel. And so I was having a lot of those thoughts. And then eventually, to cut a long story short, I went to Vegas. The day I wanted to stop drinking, I went to a friend's birthday in Vegas, and we flew up at 10 a.m. and flew back at 10 p.m. I mean, it's like a 600 Rand flight. And basically just drank too much vodka, which was not my drink. And again, I wanted to stop that day, but you don't stop the day you go to Vegas for the first time, on your
That's
best friend's
not the
birthday.
day.
That's not the day. We started drinking on like empty stomachs at 10 a.m. And he's also like a very wholesome guy. So he wasn't like one of my party friends. And it was actually quite a wholesome day. We went to Vegas to play golf, have dinner, and come back. Um, and I don't know what happened to me, but like by dinner, I was pretty drunk and I landed up causing a bit of a ruckus at the table. So my family have like it's quite a funny thing, and my siblings all have alter egos when they drink. So my sisters are like the sweetest people ever, but when they drink, my one sister's nickname is Courtney Love, the other one is Brittany. And then mine was the Black Swan. But this alter ego, like Jekyll and Hyde, for me at least, would only ever come out like once a year, like maybe. Whereas my family, like, happens quite often, and then we all just like laugh, they get away with it. So this night, the Black Swan came out, and I called the waitress a dumb slutty hoe because she asked me to move my hat, which is language I do not use to ever. Like, first of all, I've been a waitress. I don't even ever send my food back. Like, I'll never complain at a restaurant. And then to call a woman dumb and slutty and a hoe, like, that's just not my language, And then apparently management didn't want to serve me. And the next day my friend called, and then people asked me to like toe the line on my side of the table. And apparently I started having a go at them. So the next day when my friend called me, I was like mortified. And I believe because I was really like leading up to this point, I was really like, I really want to stop drinking. And had that not happened, I wouldn't have stopped. So I'm actually really like I'm sad that I ruined my friend's birthday, but I just after that experience, I was just like, this can never happen again. Like I'm done. And yeah, that's when I stopped drinking. And it's been amazing. It's like a superpower not drinking. I don't ever see myself drinking again. It's just not something I would ever want to reintroduce into my life or negotiate. Yeah.
Mm, sure. Yeah, I mean, I hear you so much in all of that. And when you said, I was drinking on weekends and to have one or two glasses of wine, like nothing out of the ordinary. Like it was like I was
Mm,
drinking like, like a normal person.
mm,
And I think, that's where the issue lies, is that it is so normalized in society. And you can watch any series. There are very few series that I've watched where there isn't a scene where to end off the day because they had a busy work day or because they want to celebrate something or because of this, there's always a reason and there's always a drink.
yeah.
And there's always the like canisters with like, I don't know, that's already like a big South African thing where you've got like the spirits in the like crystal jar glasses and
Mm.
things where you come in, you just pour like a clean whatever and like chug it down. Um, but they, drinking culture is obviously huge globally, and I have so much respect for you. It's such a massive journey, and I definitely have my complications in my journey and my partying and those things, and it is when you said like, who would I be? Who would I
Mm.
be if I wasn't drinking? And I'm going to use that question as a segue to take us a little deeper into some of the other work that you're doing, because I think that is the ultimate question, because it's not actually about the drinking. Like, you could be
Yeah.
drinking, you could be smoking weed, you could be watching Netflix 12 hours a day, you could be doing whatever. It even tips over into the other scale where, people become super obsessed with their fitness, where they're just like training, or become over obsessed with like how healthy they're eating, and it's like they can't even enjoy a dinner with friends because it's not something that they're going to eat, so they'd rather not eat. So it is all these things that we start to pack and build around us that we've been doing potentially for years and years. I mean, I was having this chat with someone the other day that I started drinking when I was 14.
Mm.
And all the kids would like go have sleepovers at each other's houses, and we'd be drinking like a 3 liter four cousin rosé. And like, you drink that whole bottle on your own until you throw up, and then once you've thrown up, you'd start drinking again.
Yeah.
And it was normal. It was
Yeah.
fine. No one shunned you. Monday at school, no one was like, ew, you were so drunk. Everyone was like, oh, they used to call it something like, you get the yellow jersey or the white jersey or something,
Yes.
for like
Yes.
being like the drunkest person at the party.
Yeah.
And it would be so
Yeah.
funny. And you'd
Yeah.
almost be like, everyone would think like, oh, she was like so cool because she like got so drunk, or whatever the case might be. But
Yeah.
these things that are so normalized, and these are the very big apparent things that are very
Mm.
tangible, and you're going to see the girl throwing up, or you're going to hear the girl being like outrageously loud, or but it's happening to us on a more subtle level, and then super subtle and super subtle and super subtle, where we have these belief systems. You speak a lot about neuroplasticity, neural pathways, and these things that we have created and built within our systems, where potentially at one point it was there to protect us, but
Mm.
by now it's actually not protecting us anymore. It's actually
Yeah.
harmful or hindering. So let's use this as a segue, maybe to go a little into self-sabotage.
Mm.
And I don't know if you want to cover that maybe as a little topic of its own, or if you want to bring that in with the deepest inner critic of those two. I'm sure they collide somewhere. So if you want to
Yeah.
maybe go into those two.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so well said, all of that. And like, to speak really quickly to identity is like, the identity of the drinker, that was the hardest part for me. Was I remember 3 months into sobriety being like, oh my God, because finally, for me at least, my drinking and my partying was very like, oh, I'm this free spirit, and it was this place I could run to be free. And finally at parties, my too muchness was accepted. I was very much the life of the party, and I was very like, I could just let go. And the crazier I was, the more I was accepted by other party people. And I had this whole identity around being the drinker, the tequila queen. Like, I used to only
Mm.
drink tequila. And I remember 3 months into sobriety being like, oh, I had to actually, it was a genuine mourning process, like mourning as in mourning the loss of this person that I felt like I wasn't going to be anymore. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be that girl that like does 8 shots of tequila and can still stand in the morning at 8 a.m. with all the boys and all the girls are gone to sleep and I'm the cool one still. Like, it was
Girl,
crazy.
you and me are like such kindred spirits. It's like everything you say, I'm like, yep.
Yeah, the yellow jersey, right?
I've got like 100 of those, I reckon.
Yes, no, it's all up on the wall. um yeah, and it's hard to break out of that. Like, it's really, really hard. I still sometimes, I'll go to a party and I'll see someone who's getting the yellow jersey, maybe not sloppy, but like someone who's just so in her like girl cool life of the party vibe, and I find myself getting triggered still sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, like that's not me, like it's bizarre. It's bizarre. And then I just get to like I practice everything. I just get to sit with that part of myself and be like, that's really interesting that that's how you feel, that you need to get validation, and how strong that part's still in you. Yeah, so the self-sabotage, I mean, I always say to people, like, go for your biggest thing, because I drinking was my biggest thing, and I thought if I can stop drinking, I can do anything. The second time I thought that was if I can go to the monastery and live there, the Zen monastery, which maybe we'll talk about later. I went and lived in one for 3 months. I was like, if I can meditate, live in a Zen monastery for 3 months and meditate for 7 days straight, I can do anything. So I go for like these things. But yeah, nailing one thing that you're sabotaging at, and there's so much that goes into it, but self-sabotage is very much just a response to the beliefs that belong to what I call the dick, the deepest inner critic. And so if you haven't done an interrogation of the core beliefs that your inner critic likes to say about you, then you're going to have no chance at really overcoming self-sabotaging behavior. And because the beliefs create the thoughts belong to the inner critic, and then the inner critic is that thing that's going to tell you, that's going to mislead you. It's the voice of the ego, it's the voice of fear. And so even for me in the drinking, it's like, oh, you need to go out and you need to express your free spirit this way, or you need to get validation this way, or you need to, and um that, until I looked at the course unconscious patterning and beliefs that were going on there, I couldn't stop that. But then I had to stop at the same time. So it's like you got to kind of hold both at the same time to create the space.
It is super interesting the way in which we have these internal conversations. And it's probably, I watched one of your videos, and you were doing a live, and you were saying how, you're super mindful. You might even say you're over mindful because you're like so aware of what you're thinking, and the overthinking and the over analyzing. And I know for me, that is a really big thing, is working with ruminating thoughts, working with imposter syndrome, with what's the word that I'm looking for? Intrusive thoughts.
Mm.
Um, and these things they can all happen on different scales. It's like, so I was diagnosed with bipolar about 10 years ago. And if you take away the label of bipolar and you just kind of call it for what it is, it's a chemical imbalance within the brain, right? And there are many subjective slash scientific slash educated guesses around how it works and why it happened. And for, I guess, humans like us who are going more into our spiritual work and our energetic work, our emotional work, and looking into the deeper rooted causes of these things that manifest as physical things in the body. And it's the same as the outside, is like the drinking is maybe like the big thing that you see, but like very, very, very subtle. If we look at like how our ruminating thoughts, our intrusive thoughts are working, that can all happen in different degrees within people, but they're there. Taking the time to catch them, but then not get caught up in them. That's really been a big thing for me. My therapist gave me a really cool exercise a while back, because I said to her, like, listen, I think I'm going crazy. And it's funny that I said I think, because like I'm thinking, and I think I'm going crazy. And a friend of mine said this to me the other day. She said, I think I'm going crazy. I had to like count the amount of thoughts I have per day. I feel like it's a lot more than like the average person has. And then she was like, okay, cool, but you need to start catching yourself. Like, how many of those are repetitive? How many of those are negative? How many of those are you feeding and going into? And so she gave me a good exercise, which was allow yourself to think about it twice and then let
Mm.
it go for that day,
Mm.
or whatever the case might be. So you're having your intrusive thoughts, or you're having a self-sabotaging thought, or you're having that imposter syndrome of like, I don't know if I can do this. Allow yourself to think about it. Okay, cool. I'm gonna have a little chit chat with myself. Why do I not think I can do this? Okay. Allow yourself to think about it again. Maybe write it down, journal it, but then let it
Mm.
go for that day. And it's helped me so much to like give myself space from those things, because there's the saying, you can't think your way out of anxiety. It's what got you there in the first place. And so giving yourself that space, and in that space is time for breathing, embodiment practices,
Mm.
meditation. You do the EFT. Maybe we can chat a little bit about about that for those who are listening, because I know that that's an amazing support tool. I'd love to hear a little more about the EFT, some reflections on the time that you spent in the monastery. I think that that's fascinating. Take a breather and explore the Aligned Living on-demand video library, along with our exclusive membership perks. Plus, our YouTube channel is already up and running, offering even more wellness content. Your path to holistic living is just one click away. Visit our website to learn more. And now, let's return to our inspiring discussion.
Yeah, I love what just your therapist said, because I mean, in Zen Buddhism and Buddhism in general, like I was very surprised. I didn't know a lot about Buddhism before I went there. And that's a whole other story in itself. If anyone's interested, there's a podcast episode about how that all happened. But allowing yourself to think about it, what you're really doing there is, so these are like the crucial steps, right? That conscious awareness of, okay, this voice belongs to my inner critic. Like this this thought belongs to my inner critic. Just being able to acknowledge that, because a lot of people don't even know what is them and what's their inner critic, or what is the voice of love and what is the voice of fear. And so calling it out, being like, okay, cool, let me think about it again. That's you inviting it in. So I had this really beautiful moment in the Zen monastery with one of the Zen masters, and they were like, because I was having a hard time with my inner critic while I was there. And I realized that Buddhism, all it is just like inner critic work. It's crazy. It's just like, and all the work is just greeting, acknowledging, accepting that part of us. Greeting, acknowledging, accepting. And so it's like, oh, I see you. There's this dark thought or self-doubt thought or fearful thought or anxious thought or whatever. It comes from this most likely younger part of me. I call it the inner critic. You can call it whatever, or the dick. And then inviting it in like you would a little child that's throwing a tantrum, or a child that's scared, or a child that's anxious, and just saying, cool, you can come in here. You can sit next to me here on this bench. You're welcome here. And I'm not going to abandon you. And I'm not going anywhere. And I'm also not going to try and change you. You can sit here, but I'm also present here. And I'm the adult. I'm the sage. I'm the person that knows that ultimately I'm going to be fine, that ultimately I'm not under threat right now, and that no one is trying to kill me, and I know I'm going to get my next meal. And so that, yeah, that's like a beautiful practice for that. And it's pretty much just the same thing as what your therapist said, which is like, allow yourself to think about it twice and then let it go. And what you find is when you give that voice space, it usually calms down. Like when you say that to a child, the child's going to calm down. And then you get the space afterwards, which is what you were talking about, which is like, now I can do something differently. I can do EFT, I can meditate, I can go for a walk, journal or whatever. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say on that before?
Yeah, I would love for you to chat a little bit about EFT for
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
listening who might not know what it is.
Yes. So EFT, it's emotional freedom technique, and it's a tapping, it's also known as tapping, emotional freedom tapping, some people call it. And it basically, you tap on these meridian lines. It's an Eastern practice, Eastern medicinal like practice. And you tap on these, you can YouTube it, there are a ton of them and they're amazing. And you tap on these various meridian points in your, starts on your hand, and then it goes various points on your face, down, and then onto the top of your head. And accessing those, what's really amazing about it is the first couple of rounds of tapping, you actually say the fear. So you acknowledge the anxiety. And it always starts with, even though I have these limiting beliefs, or even though I have this anxiety, I completely love and accept myself. Even though I have this anxiety, I completely love and accept myself. And then you move and you start on the next point, and then you say, I have this anxiety. This anxiety is overwhelming. I feel like I can't breathe. And you're just like, and if it's limiting beliefs, it's, I'm not enough. I feel like I can't do this. I feel like my boss is going to shout at me. I feel like I'm going to fail. And it's actually the first couple of rounds, and it feels counterintuitive, but like we just said, it's letting that inner critic, it's letting that thing have its say and come to the surface. The only way that things stay unconscious is because we keep pushing it down there, right? Like we know this from Jung and a lot of psychology, and anyone who knows anything about shadow work. The more you push down the shadow, the more it will unconsciously rule your life, and you call it fate. So these practices and a lot of this work is about bringing all these thoughts and these your dick and letting it have its say, and bringing it to the surface so that you can do something about it, letting it have its say, and then rewiring it from there. And EFT is amazing
Mhm.
at that. Eventually the last round of EFT will be, always feels like there's not enough rounds of positive stuff, but it releases through these specific meridians on our in our system, our energy system.
Mm, thank you. And is that something that you can facilitate? Does it have to be in person, or can it be a digital facilitation?
Yeah, I do it in sessions, and I use it for clients. So, in
Mm.
their process or the journey, if they're struggling mainly with limiting beliefs, I'll take them through a process like that. But it's very chilled. Like you can
Mm.
go and find ones on YouTube. It's not something that is, yeah, it's not dangerous or whatever. It's actually a very simple thing that once you learn the method, you can do it yourself.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I align living the like the core base or like mission is to empower women to become their own healers. And
Mm,
it's this balance on this Miss Independence stance of like, I can do it all and I can do it all on my own. In contrast with you can do it all on your own,
mm,
in a sense. And finding that balance, like I always say, like it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a sisterhood to uplift a woman. And to not forget that your inner child is still within you, and you
mm,
being you, even though you're a full grown adult now and you're very capable, even when you don't think you're capable, you're always actually capable. You're actually extraordinarily capable. That reaching out for support is probably one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. I mean, I've been in talk therapy for like over a decade, but I know that like talk therapy is not for everyone, and talk therapy can also be re-traumatizing.
mm,
So there's so many different things. There's so many different things that you can do to support yourself. And
mm.
I would love for you to maybe share a little more, because you were saying like these are one of my little tools in my lovely tool bag that I have. That before we go on to that, was there anything else you
Okay.
wanted to share about your stay in the monastery?
Oh my gosh.
Because I know there's probably a lot, but anything that maybe has like come into your awareness or jumped out.
Mm,
Or most people just go head over to the podcast and listen to the full story.
yeah, probably. Probably. I need to do another one. But yeah, it was a very, no, I think I'm good. It will come up.
Okay,
That's my favorite story, was sitting with the Zen master and what she told me about inviting someone in like a kid. So I'm glad I got to transmit that. Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. So then I guess let's go move on to your offering.
Mm,
Um, what you kind of do. I know you mentioned a little bit in the beginning, but I think for a lot of people and in the wellness world at the moment, it does almost feel like everyone's a coach.
mm,
And so I would love maybe your insight as to, like you've shared a bit about, becoming a coach and why you wanted to. But I guess now that you're in it and you're like 2 years in it, I know that that shifts and changes so much your perspective as to why it's we constantly, as we evolve, our work evolves, and our work almost like, mirrors us, and we manifest as within, so without. So I'm
mm,
sure you have a very different insight or take on what it means to be a coach, what it means to mentor people, what it means to be a spiritual guide, and who who are the humans that you help?
I really hone in on this self-doubt and imposter syndrome thing because I feel like that's just something I'm so passionate about. My mission in life is to help people believe in themselves and not just enough to go after their dreams, but to experience success from their dreams. Or, like I said in the beginning of this, like to enjoy their success if they're already, I work with some high achievers and they're not, I had this one person who she just got a promotion and now she's standing in a boardroom with 7 men and she's the only woman and she just can't like speak in that kind of scenario. Helping people claim their rightful potential, their rightful place in this world, and do, I swear a lot, sorry, but do what the fuck they came here to do, instead of letting that pesky inner critic get in the way of that. So I teach, like, it's part healing work because I believe it's about healing the self-doubt and imposter syndrome and those beliefs in us that fuel that doubt, that fear, that inaction. Or I mean, I get a lot of people that come to me and they're taking all the action but not getting any results. And I help them to scale it back, bring in joy, bring in a deep spiritual practice, and then merging that with the neuroscience. Most people don't even know what their core beliefs are that are fueling these inner critic thoughts. Like I said, sometimes I don't even know that a thought is an inner critic until I've written it down or it's been bothering me so much. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's a very normal thought that I actually belongs to my inner critic and is actually holding me back. I've designed a really amazing program taking people through that process. It is part mindset, part healing, part manifestation. It's all well versed in neuroscience. And what I found and what makes me, I guess, a little bit different to most is I've always been big into manifestation and the law of attraction. And I kind of reached a dead end when I went to the monastery because obviously Buddhism is all about non-attachment and not needing things and not wanting things, and even to some degree not having desires. But we can never as humans be desireless because even the desire to not have a desire is a desire. But these are the Buddhist things. And like the thing is, the Buddhists, I don't know what you call success, but the Buddhists are the happiest, some of the happiest people in the world. And if that's, if you want to be happy, which I think is what everyone's after anyway, they like think the success is going to make, basically everyone's just trying to be happy. They think that success is going to make them happy and fulfilled. They're not big into so much the active manifestation that we have. So I sat there and I was like, Flip, how am I going to teach this to people and what can I bring from this? And so what it made me realize is that most manifestation teachers from the get-go, they'll be like, what do you want to call in? Like you go straight in, like step one, every single manifestation teacher is like, you call in what you want. I believe that is a big mistake to start from there because you kind of finish how you start, and that's like your whole intention for the program. And I'm worried that, well, no, I'm worried. I've seen that, and I've had this even happen where I set my intention for the manifestation, and then when I get it, I realize I actually want something different. Kind of happened with acting actually, and how I realized on module 3, I was like, hey, I actually want to. I don't even think I want this thing, and I had by that stage tapped into my true self, my higher self. So what I have people do is in phase 1, it's called neutralize. My manifestation process is neutralize, alchemize, align, and ascend. In neutralize, we bring all the heaviness that is impacting a person when they come in, like in their life, when they come to see me. So if they're experiencing self-doubt and imposter syndrome and the inner critic, all of that, I help them neutralize all of that energy through practices from A Course in Miracles, which is being able to shift from a perspective of fear to love. And that's non-dual principles. And Buddhists also practice non-dual principles. So basically love and acceptance for the way that your life is today without anything needing to change. And I force clients off the bat to work on that and find ways to, and I have a lot of, it's not a simple process, but a lot of ways for them to realize that this love and this life that they're looking to manifest, they can actually experience big chunks of it now already. And then we look at beliefs after that. And then only in like module 3, 6 weeks into my program, do people even set their aligned vision or, call in what they want. And what I found is before week 6, they're manifesting left, right, and center anyway. I feel like manifestation is this weird thing that has been capitalized. But actually, if you look at most spiritual people, they're like, they don't do any of these courses and stuff, like they're just manifesting from this like beautiful place of like pure alignment and consciousness. There's no, I don't even think they're doing affirmations that much, if I'm being really honest. So I want to give people like the opportunity to manifest like a monk that way. um and yeah, there are amazing results that people get, and they get to learn, because you can't manifest your way out of hardships in life. And in that neutralized phase, when you learn acceptance, when you learn surrender, when you learn the basis of spirituality that way, you can get through anything, literally
Mm,
anything.
mm.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the third chapter of align,
Mm.
as my question or reflection to you of what do you see an aligned life looking as, or what do you think an aligned life feels like or looks like or is for you? What is your description of living in alignment?
I'd say it's true acceptance for everything that is in your life, exactly the way it is today. All the people, the way your mom is, the way your dad is, the way that person is that upset you, and all the good things. It's true acceptance of all those things and finding peace in that. And then I would say blended with your ability to show up authentically in all that.
Mm.
So you are in alignment when you can accept your life for exactly the way that it is today, and when you can confidently say that you are making choices, speaking, living authentically to who you are, and you're not living a lie.
Whenever I hear people's answers to that question, I'm just like, I feel like it makes me feel aligned because I'm just like,
Mm,
yes, that is so beautiful.
mm,
Um, we are almost at the end. I'm going to squeeze you for a last little bit of information.
sure.
Um, I would love for you to share 3 practical practices, rituals, or routines that you do daily or weekly or monthly that are practices that help you to feel grounded, aligned, more clear, and maybe even practices that help you to invite that joy that you speak of so frequently
Mm.
into your life.
That time in COVID, I was depressed, and I swear people don't believe me, but dancing to one joyful song a day, even though I didn't feel like it, brought me out of that depression. And I always find when I'm like slipping in life, or things are starting to feel a bit stale or whatever, I always bring back like at least one song, like every day for 30 days, a joyful song. Even if you don't feel like dancing, you flip and put that song on and you stand in the middle of the room and you move your body. So that's a really beautiful one, which I feel like is so underrated. I don't know if this is just me, but like honestly, it changes my life every time. And then I do breath work. So at the moment, I'm getting certified as a breath work practitioner. And so I highly, highly recommend anyone listening to this to do some kind of transformational breath work. So um, look for it in your area: holotropic breath work, conscious connected breath work, these ceremonies where people like literally take you for an hour and a half, and you enter transcendent states. I feel like this is, you rewire the subconscious, the intelligence of the breath goes through all your cells and clears things out and has you cry and scream, and can literally release trauma that was like that is in your subconscious from when you were born. It's like the moment you were born, I mean your actual birth. It's amazing. So breath work, joyous dance, and I really love chanting. So with my 10-minute meditation in the morning that I do, it's like a bare minimum. I learned some really awesome chants in the Zen monastery, one particular one, which is the Heart Sutra. And so I chant that every morning. And that's really amazing because it brings in the resonance of this like wise old, it's called the Heart Sutra. And it's
Healing
amazing.
frequency.
Yeah.
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 Actually, you're coming back for part 2 for
Yes.
sure.
It's a lot.
There is still so much we can talk about. Thank you,
Mm,
thank you, thank you, thank you for
thank you.
sharing so openly and vulnerably, and yeah, for being here and for your time. I know that people are going to want to get in contact with you after this,
Mm,
so we will put all your links in the show notes. But
perfect.
from you, where and how is the easiest place for people to get in touch with you?
Instagram, the alchemized spirit. But all the links I'm sure will be there as well. Yeah, hit me up. That's where I like to hang out on the gram. I'm not trying to
Awesome.
complicate things, although TikTok might be canceled soon. So I'm glad I'm sticking to Instagram right now.
No, I'm like, yeah, as well. I was on TikTok and then I got like dragged into this really weird dark algorithm and there were all these videos coming up on my feed and I was like I actually couldn't. I was like, I didn't even know how it got there. I think I watched like one thing and then the next thing I knew it was like the most horrific videos that were coming up and I was just like,
Oh
TikTok
my
is like
gosh.
TikTok is like YouTube in the sense where I feel like it's not as regulated as Instagram, which is like the
Yeah.
positives and negatives to shit being regulated. We know that.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh, that was very hectic. So I got off
Yeah.
TikTok. So cool. Instagram it is. That's where I hang out as well the most. So anyone who's listening to this, as I always say, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And
Mm,
we both love talking about these topics. It is our passion to support you. So honestly, drop into the DMs, ask your questions. If you are listening or watching this, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Send this on to anyone you feel might even just take a tiny bit of information and perhaps it supports them on your journey, on their journey. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Ashleigh, for being here.
of
It feels
course.
like I've known you forever. It's the best.
Mm.
And I see collaborations in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, catch you on episode 26. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Aligned Living Podcast. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a fresh perspective on your journey towards holistic well-being. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, your feedback fuels our mission to bring you valuable content that aligns with your life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and feel free to reach out with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future episodes. We would love to hear from you. But until next time, take good care of yourself, embrace the present moment, and remember you are your own healer. Thank you for being a part of our community. Goodbye for now.